Well, it's Friday, and I think we've almost been presenting and talking to students for an entire week now, just having come back from our break. And my voice is a little raspy. I don't know if yours is, but I'm really happy to be here with Nawandi and Daniel, who have been the facilitators for Shiny Gems, which is a program we're going to hear some things about. Thank you for agreeing to do the podcast, and
my pleasure.
We're excited about having an opportunity to have our community know more about the program. We ended up, for us at Nancy Campbell Academy, it's a fulfillment of a desire on our part to make sure that the work that we're doing to help schools in our community, just support what they're doing and make things better, to make sure that we have really good materials and good understanding of facilitation. So you've been here all week facilitating our grade 11s who are going to be going into schools in the community to talk about technology and some other important things, which we'll hear more about. Technology and the use of technology, which is, believe me, a number one item on every parent's agenda. It's a big topic here. We've spent quite a few sessions with some very top quality people trying to understand AI and its role and how's that affecting the future. I was recently in China at an education conference, and I didn't have a conversation that wasn't involving AI, of course. And of course, everybody's trying to think about it as parents in terms of what's this mean to the future careers I should be guiding my kids to do, and what's going to not be here by the time they're graduating. And at the high school level, it's even more critical because students are going into different areas.
Yes.
So one of the things we try to do at Nancy Campbell is really have our students be thoughtful about its use. And when we heard about the program that you're doing, we felt it really aligned very well with the issues we're trying to deal with. And we want it to be, if anything, we want our students to be thoughtful individuals and aware of their own leadership and educational capacity that they do just by being themselves in the community and talking to younger people. We're big believers in having our students facilitate and help the growth of other children and youth, as you know. And so the fit was so good. And having been through your process this week, just hearing the joy that the students had, and we'll talk more about that, but we've done quite a lot of interviews with them, and they gave a lot of feedback in the reflection meeting. And it's been actually really uplifting to see. But I did go into the groups that they facilitated because, just so everybody knows, we were having them facilitate on this day the rest of our school, kind of, so that everybody knew what the program was our initial idea. And in going into those groups, I was really actually quite affected by the levels of engagement. Now, I'd have to, of course, brag a little bit and say that our students are engaging students, but, everybody's still a teenager and they're still learning what they're doing. And whether they're an adult or teenager, engagement's always a big thing. And they were really engaged, and our younger students and students all up were really engaged with it. And the diversity of the material, activities, and things that you help them to learn how to facilitate, they were speaking with, an increased level of confidence, like that made you feel that they were very comfortable and that they could handle, things, but also we're doing it with such warmth and love. So I was thinking it might be good if you could each give us a bit of your background, because I know you've both done a lot of things and are doing a lot of things, but you've really committed a lot of energies to this program. So, if you want to share a little bit about maybe Nawandi, you want to start and
Sure.
let us know.
Yeah. Well, I think Shiny Gems for me is a continuation of something maybe that even my parents taught me growing up, which was, we would celebrate a cultural celebration called Kwanzaa, which was founded in the United States. And it has 7 principles, beginning with unity and ending with faith. But just on the 6th day of Kwanzaa, we celebrate each year Kuumba, which in Kiswahili means creativity. And the way that creativity was defined was, we shall leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it. Beautiful. So when I encountered Shiny Gems, and actually Daniel brought this concept to my attention, it seemed to me to be a very fitting response. My own background in media began with, I could go back to high school, working on the high school newspaper, but professionally I started at CNN and then Turner Entertainment, producing children's television, and then Georgia Public Broadcasting, producing a range of public broadcasting programming, documentaries, and so forth. But what I've seen is the real need for people to understand what they're consuming. And also, of course, in the 30 plus years that I've been working in media, seeing that people have become content creators, but often without a lot of thought being given to what am I creating each day when I make a post, when I decide to put something in my LinkedIn account, or, there's a range of platforms people are using. And so to me, Shiny Gems is one way that we can leave this large global community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it.
Yeah.
And to add to that, TikTok, Snapchat, there's so many applications that they're nameless and they're going to change probably 3 months to 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Continuously.
Exactly. Yeah. And you brought so you bring a lot of experience, probably experiences of things not working in media and engagement of children and youth. So as well as things working highly successful. So you've been got such a wide range. So that's an interesting thing that you bring. What about you, Dan?
Yeah. For me, it's very similar. It also starts at a very early age as to why even the idea of Shiny Gems came about. And to summarize it as much as possible is that for me as a child and as a youth, I experienced what I would consider excess of media, right? And the technology around me when it came to watching movies over and over again, sometimes as many times as watching Cinderella or Peter Pan 4 times in a row, just because I loved it so much. And I don't know what my parents were doing that they didn't tell me to stop the movies and to do something more productive. But the fact is that was part of my reality. Not my whole reality, but part of it. And that would be, if I look at some of my early drawings as a child, you see that my drawings were scenes from the movies that I was watching or interpretations of those scenes, right? So one could look at that and clearly see how my mind as a child was very much influenced by the media in my surroundings. And to this day as an adult, even though I haven't seen some of these shows in years, I can still recall certain dialogue or lines, or I can imagine these visuals. That's just a testament to how powerful and impactful media is, for better or for worse.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then over the years, it just so happened that media production and various media such as music, journalism, documentary, podcasts, they all became a passion for me, and it became my career. Having to produce documentaries and podcasts for clients like the CBC, for PBS back in the US, for NPR as well, iHeartMedia and many others. And seeing that even as an adult, I needed more tools as well to continue interacting with media. Now, in parallel to my career, I was doing a lot of volunteer work, particularly through the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. And we were doing media workshops. And when we were doing those workshops, we were helping these 11 to 15-year-olds or so, trying to understand their media environment better and to produce small pieces of content like short films or a little news report or a song, something along those lines. And this is something, and Nawandi and I got to experience together several times as well through the junior youth program, how powerful that was. So over the years, I started connecting and experimenting these different areas. And we launched in the state of North Carolina in the United States a pilot after-school program that was a media literacy program. And it went really well, and it was very well received. And then I started asking myself, okay, well, how can we continue building on this experience to offer it to even more schools? And what could that look like, right? So then I called up Nawandi so that we could collaborate on building this together. And then other folks have come into the picture as well to assist. And that is, in one sense, how Shiny Gems came about. Another dimension of what influenced Shiny Gems is seeing my own children, who are now 12 and 10, and seeing that they need this.
Yeah.
Right? And so I have a responsibility as a father, not just to educate them in the home, but I would love to translate what we are learning in our household, and how can that be applied in a classroom setting. And so now here we are in Stratford, Ontario, where we have been lovingly welcomed and invited. And it's been such a pleasure to apply Shiny Gems and what we're learning with Shiny Gems here at the Nancy Campbell Academy.
Sounds great. I was thinking as you were talking that we haven't heard too much about exactly what it is, but it's easy to see why both of your backgrounds would advance this pretty quickly in terms of making sure that the content was both effective for the purposes you're trying to do.
Yes.
And sometimes I've thought, when I see some things that have been produced and you think, well, what were people thinking when they did this, And I was so much more relieved when I realized they weren't thinking at all. Because I thought, okay, then the problem is, because I believe, as Abdu'l-Baha says in one quote, the root cause of wrongdoing is ignorance. So I feel like if it's ignorance, that can be helped very easily by education. Where prejudice is like, I remember Nat Rutstein saying, that's an emotional commitment to ignorance. And so I think that most times people start making things, or youth start making things, and at that level, they're just trying to get the technology things down or, produce something. And not a lot of thought goes into, what I'm trying to do with this. Maybe thinking what's popular or what's in. So there's a lot of posturing for pleasing and whatnot. And I know that Shiny Gems especially focuses on the meaning. But how do you get at the meaning? How do you get the students to, get excited about the creativity, as Nawandi said, and get inspired by that, which I saw in the things that I witnessed today, but also really connect that to, what are you really trying to do from a meaning point of view?
Yeah. Well, in the designing the curriculum itself, so we have 12 modules right now to unleash the fact that, of course, man is a mind rich in gems of inestimable value. And the number of those gems, the qualities of the soul, beauty, patience, moderation, these are just a few that we're giving students as an example. But we chose to map out the actual structure or the format for the lessons such that there would be an opportunity for a student to acknowledge, here's where I am. We call that a check-in. What do I think I understand about creativity or beauty or moderation, and how that impacts my interaction with media and technology? Then we produced a video segment for each lesson, because we also recognize the various kinds of learning styles that will exist in any group. And even within those videos, we very intentionally chose a broad range of production styles, so that for some, they will see kind of an animated approach. Some are actually live action. Some involve, a young person like yourself speaking directly to you into the camera.
Even stop motion too.
Stop motion. Yeah. And so by using those various techniques, we wanted to give all of the students an opportunity to understand their own potential to interact with one of these virtues in relation to media. And then the lesson that follows that helps them to dig a little more deeply into what they've just seen. And then there's a portion for consultation. They actually have something to share. They're not empty vessels. We're not trying to pour information about media and technology into someone who we assume knows nothing. We actually know that they are rich and they have so much experience. They're more like seeds. So can we create an environment in which they can release that potential? But also we recognize that they are young. So sometimes they've actually, and they will discover for themselves, oh, I actually was being led down a path to believing something that isn't actually true. And often the consultative portion helps them to begin to understand that. And then for classrooms in which the teachers and the educational leaders are willing to give a little more time, there's an extension for each lesson that allows the young people to produce media all the way from poetry through podcasts, through video games, all sorts of different elements that they can actually contribute themselves.
Yeah, and I remember a few of the groups today that reported back said they got to the extension activities and they're pretty excited about some of the things they come up with, even to the level that they wanted their games played.
That's right.
So that was good. So the allowing, and I think the idea of different media styles for the videos in each lesson gives them a chance to see a range of possibilities. So it all is kind of learning styles, creativity, get them excited about different aspects. And I noticed in the groups that some kids jumped in when that part was done, and some kids jumped in when this other part got more animated. But what did strike me is how loving and encouraging the youth that were doing it was to the comments of this youth. So how have you sort of polished that when you're training them as facilitators? What are the kinds of things you're telling them that make them be aware of that power they might possess to, help the people they're talking to become shiny?
Well, to answer that question, I'm going to take a few steps back, if that's okay. And it's to state, and also connecting it to a previous question you said about what is it and how is it being offered. In short, at the moment, the form that it takes is that it's a curriculum to be offered in schools, right? And so one could say that this is a media literacy or digital citizenship curriculum offered in schools. And obviously there are nuances to it as to the framework in which it's being offered, such as Nawandi shared about the virtues being that framework. And most importantly, that there are wonderful curricula out there already addressing media literacy and digital citizenship. But unfortunately, the vast majority stop at a very technical level and look at the technology at surface level in terms of what software and applications or exact shows or movies are out right now that need to be talked about. And instead, we are taking steps back and looking at underlying concepts and what are the character traits that are needed to both consume and produce media. Because the specific technology, the specific software, the specific shows or movies or video games that youth are playing or watching, they're going to change month to month, year to year. So why should we attempt to even try to catch up with that? We instead want them to voice it. We want them to bring that out. And so a very important aspect of the curriculum is consultation, where there are open-ended questions for each student in each class, whether it's here in Ontario, whether it's in Quebec, in BC, whether it's in Washington, D.C., in LA, in Colombia, in Brazil, wherever it might be, their answers might be different. There might be some trends, but they will change if a student is doing it in 2026 or in 2028 or in 2052, right? But those underlying concepts and ideas and those character traits, they essentially don't change, right? And that's what we're trying to focus on is the long term. Now, coming back to your question, we initially saw this as precisely, in a sense, Nancy Campbell beat us to it. Read into our early vision, because we felt that eventually graduates from the Shiny Gems curriculum would be the ones facilitating those younger than themselves, right? And so we thought, well, we'll train the teachers first, meaning the adult educators, in the curriculum, so that maybe in a few years, in several years, there will be enough young people that have gone through the training, through the material, they'll be familiar with it, and then can train those younger than themselves. And then here comes Nancy Campbell Academy, that already has this beautiful vision of the empowerment of young people, and invites us to train who? Not their teachers, but their high school students, right? And so that is such a beautiful sign of synchronicity, very much in line with our vision, that youth have what it takes, with some encouragement and love and patience and support, to be able to accompany those slightly younger than themselves, right? So for example, an 11th grader or 12th grader, facilitating the same curriculum with an 8th grader, a 7th grader, 6th grader, maybe even younger, right? Because those high schoolers, they're like role models for the middle schoolers. They're those peers.
Yeah, they love them.
Right? The middle schoolers look up to the high schoolers. And I've heard it here in the hallways, the way they look to them and so on. That is much more powerful, right? There's still a role for sure as us as adult educators to be involved, but the dynamic does change.
Yeah, that's an
so that I just want to say, thank you in a sense to Nancy Campbell Academy to have that vision and to see that and to invite us to participate in that process.
Yeah, great. I was what your comments made me think of. Well, we always have a 3-day training for the teachers before we start a new semester, and we look at different issues. And one of the issues that came up in this last one was talking about this role of our students in the community, because, our students have to do 50 hours of service every year. In Ontario, they have to do 40 for the 4-year period, but we link that service to the development of qualities. And what we've learned is by them, at first I was worried because we were doing so much service that the students were doing so much that I was thinking, the parents are going to say, well, what about the academics, And but then I thought, well, that doesn't worry me. And what I started to notice was that the more service that the students did, the faster they could do their academics, and the clearer they were, and the more valuable materials and ideas they were producing. So then it started, really through their, learning from what was happening to them. And they were taking on what appeared to be, too much to them, but then they would do it. And it was over and over. It wasn't just one group of students. And so then that made me think, okay, we have to figure out how to do that more. But then you need some structure and some basis for how to make it possible. And then I saw that whenever we took the students into the community, in the last year or two, Shabnam Tashakur was engaged with us to really get the World Citizenship Curriculum students into the community. And every time they were doing that, and also through the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program, every time they took this role of helping to, educate those younger than them, they were very excited about those relationships. And even though at the beginning they might have been really resistant to go and do it just because, it wasn't something that was on the cool agenda or whatever it was, they still would go. And as soon as they did, that was the thing. If I were to stop them over the last year, what did you enjoy in the last semester with your courses? That was always the first thing, like going into the community. Yeah. And they started to look forward to the classes. And the teachers that had them in the classes were thrilled to have the example of a youth that's a little bit older that the kids are dying to see and take. So they were learning much faster from, a slightly older youth. So then in this last advance, this is bit lengthy, but in this last advance, I recalled that there was a statement from Abdullah where he said, that the teacher learns 90% and the student learns 10%. So I said to the teachers, if that's the case, then we really got to get our students teaching, because they're going to learn so much more. And I found it interesting today in the reflection meeting that one of the girls said, it was the materials were so much different when we did them with the students. But she identified, because when we were doing them, we were not only thinking about what they were, but we were thinking about how are we going to teach them. And it almost seemed like she was excited that they just had to learn them. But the act of teaching them had caused them to have to process it differently and more. And maybe they felt like they didn't quite get the beauty right away. So the idea you had about having your graduates then go and do it, having benefited from it, I felt a little bit of that from her when she said they enjoyed it so much. And I think the kind of apprehension or maybe a little bit of nervousness about how I'm going to facilitate a group of this, and I'm just learning it myself, but they did it and they were so excited about it. So I think this reinforcement of the role of youth as we can't possibly reach all the children with adults, and we have to have the children and the youth own the environment and really become clear that they want their environment to have these qualities and this good judgment. And I think that's what I saw happening quite a bit as they were processing this material for somebody else. They themselves were becoming more committed to these values and their work in service in that way. Had you seen that sort of happening over this week? Because you were more engaged than we were. And I didn't realize this was a new experience, a new experience for you, actually. I had no idea. I thought this is what you do all the time. So
It was very exciting, though. It was thrilling because you could see, I think probably more so than when working with professional educators, obviously adults are learning as well, but even how we show that we're learning, it may have a sort of a blasé tone to it because, we may assume
we almost want to act like we know.
You know a lot of things. It was it was thrilling to watch the students because they showed enthusiasm as they were growing. And we intentionally set up the training so that the first day they would spend more time on a lesson so that they could really dig more deeply into it. The pacing was much slower. The second day, we picked up the pace a little, in part because, as you well know from your many years' experience with youth and what you were speaking to earlier, when they have more responsibility, they actually do better.
Yeah.
There's a strange, maybe it's not just North American, but in North America saying, well, they need to study, give them all their time.
Yeah.
But actually, it's too much time. And then they wind up, actually not doing as well as when they also have a junior youth group or a children's class or an after-school job or something that they have responsibility for. And I think that's what I saw in this arc of progress this week was they began to understand more of what they were called to do and that it would not be passive. They were not just the recipients.
There's some pressure.
Right.
Yes, they're responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what you said now to me is really important because I think so much of the learning that we're expecting youth to do is for the future. And I when I started the school, I used to say to the students, we're not waiting for you to become people. You're already people. And people should be doing things in the community. Like, we're not waiting for you to acquire a whole bunch of something, but we're going to have to learn while we're running, while we're doing, and acquire what we need, And I noticed that every time we do this wildfire experience, which you probably heard some things about, and we create a sort of high pressure zone, but a great friendly zone. We use it as a bonding between all of them, but they're all having to do 5 different arts. And I saw you have some of the similar things, but they choose what art they want to do. And we start out in the week, we study certain materials. So their arts that they're going to create have to be thematic on some theme that has become current amongst them or, resonates with what's going on. So it might be the role of service in one's life or, we've had many different themes. And the last one was equality of men and women. And it was very interesting that whenever we had to, by Thursday night, they have to perform what they've created. And I know that they would never have created much by then if we didn't have that expectation, right? So Thursday night, your group is up and you're going to be performing it in front of everybody here. And then it's going to be used in the spring festival or the fall showcase, if it's good enough,
Right.
and you'll decide, we'll decide. And then I found that that wasn't quite good enough if I didn't go in by the second day to say, okay, where are you? What ideas do you have? And then the third day, well, by now we should almost be able to see something significant. And then, so, just keeping these visits. So it was just me going in, show me what you have, and they would take it more and more seriously. But the pressure of time and the pressure of a product that should be meaningful and is rooted in thought is the process that we take them through. And it has been absolutely astounding, the volume. And then it gets in the DNA and then it starts happening without.
That's crucial.
It's such a fascinating thing to almost like the 100th monkey thing that, after.
I'm not familiar with that. You might have to fill me in on that one or later.
Okay.
After the interview.
Just, through the historic thing of them becoming involved, it seems to be passed on without them even meeting the ones that were there before.
Right.
Like even new students come in and the capacity, they don't start where we started. They start way over here with an understanding and an expectation that they're going to create this. And then it becomes easier and easier for them to create. And the quality of what they're creating increases. But it's very much rooted in that study.
Yes.
So this connection between the virtues and the technology and the development of kind of critical thought of what is my role? Am I contributing to the common good? Am I detracting? And just giving some kind of standard is good. Now, a lot of people say that, you have this religion, you have that background, these values. So how do you deal with this issue of, whose values and, are we rooting it in, is this your faith's values, that faith's value? Like, is there some kind of universal values? What is it that how do you deal with that issue?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because an underlying principle in the way we structured this is for it to be universal. Yes, and Nawandi and I, as individuals and others, involved with the program and construction of Shiny Gems, will have their own individual beliefs and faiths or non-faiths and so on. And that is no problem. But what connects us all is our innate character traits. And there's so many words for this. And so let's not get lost with like the taxonomy and the vocabulary, because we can call it character traits, we can call it virtues, we can call them values, we can call them, what else? There's so many terms. Yeah, that's enough. Make up another term, But I'll just list a few. Responsibility.
You need that.
Right? Patience, generosity, humility, moderation, trustworthiness. I mean, these are universal in that we all, the way we view it is that we're all born with these essentially. Just like the quote that Nawandi referenced earlier, that we're minds rich in gems of inestimable value. It doesn't, when you might be walking over a mine, but not necessarily know it. You have to dig.
Yeah.
You have to work to find it, right? And so we all have these gems, but the gem in one mine will look different than the gem in another mine, right? And so that is the essence of our work. These are values and virtues that we all absolutely have, but we'll reflect them in different ways and at different times. Some will maybe reflect them much stronger at certain moments than other people. So there's absolutely no reason why any sort of difference of belief or religious belief or opinion should clash. And if there were to be a clash of sorts, it should be open enough that difference of opinion should emerge, right? And should come to the surface. Yeah.
I was just thinking as well that, you rarely find anyone arguing against responsibility.
Yeah.
Now we have to decide in our environment, what is the expression of responsibility in our community, company, school, whatnot. The communications consulting company that I run is called the Virtues Collective. And I remember very specifically working, because I was once a senior political correspondent for public broadcasting. So I've worked on lots of, programming that could be seen as contentious because
touchy
there are
issues
lots of political parties and the like. One time, not too many years ago, I was supervising a project in which the members of the production team were starting to turn on each other, though we are a unit responsible for getting a product out. And so I thought perhaps they were being influenced by the subject matter, politics. And so when we sat together and I brought to their attention that there is a system called consultation. Now, I learned of consultation when I learned of the Baha'i faith, but I don't think that anyone would be excluded from it. And so I explained, we practice this with dignity, moderation, and so on and so forth. These are gifts of character or virtues. Now, these were these are union men and women. They're used to a certain language and whatnot, but no one was argumentative about it. What had to happen, though, we had to say, how will we express dignity? And that may not be the same as the expression at the cathedral or the mosque or the church or the Baha'i Center. But for our production, dignity looks like this. Moderation looks like this. And so then we could move forward in unity without having, so much contention.
Yeah.
And I'll share this too. I mean, both Nawandi and I have, as we've shared, we've worked in media environments with news teams, with documentary teams, with podcast teams, right? Filmmaking teams. And I'll tell you from firsthand experience, there has been great value in contributing this language of virtues to my professional team of adults that are not used to talking about these gifts of character, but have been greatly thankful for me to introduce these elements. And I'll share this. For example, I was working with PBS for some time and public broadcasting services in the U.S. And with my team, I started bringing up these ideas of consultation and doing it in unity. And that with unity, in order to achieve unity, we all have to share our opinions in a loving manner and to openly voice it. And eventually we'll come to a truthful conclusion, even if we're not all in complete agreement. But if we do it in unity, that the best result will come. Now, I didn't say that all in one instance. It took several months to sort of get this message out. But then I noticed over time, my team members themselves started using this language and giving me like a little wink, kind of like, hey, why don't we consult about this, right, Daniel? And I would give me like a little wink about it. And so I'm just showing firsthand how it takes a concerted effort to bring about this kind of language in this particular case, into the workspace. But then it had an impact on the kind of media we were producing at that particular time. It was a podcast for kids, right? And so imagine producing a podcast, supposedly an educational podcast for children, but in a disunified environment that is constantly bickering and fighting.
Not likely a good outcome.
It's not going to be a good outcome, right? So we have to really be very conscious of how to bring these virtues into the workspace, into the media, and into the stories that we're telling. And we'll find creative ways of doing it. There's that doesn't mean that everything that we produce is going to be perfect or that it'll be
pleasing in every way
pleasing or all, kind of like peace and love. Like, no, life is very complex.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were both talking that, one of the issues that we try to make clear to the students is how we can develop respect for people of all backgrounds, all belief systems, all whether identified with specific ones, and we have to be respectful of where people are coming from and deal with what is rather than what we might imagine or hope things should be. And from that point, if we're going to do that, I read this document. We use moral dilemma discussions, and part of what I always tell the students at the beginning, the lowest level of moral development is to seek for opinion agreement, and the highest level is to want to be willingly hearing all kinds of opinions, whatever they are, as diverse as possible, and then taking those opinions and reflecting on whether or not that's something that you share, you don't share. We don't have to become what each other thinks just because we've heard it, and we've never diminished ourselves by hearing what somebody else has to say. So it's this high, really a level of the learned being identified as amenable, able to be persuaded rather than knowing everything. So I noticed that the tone of how your training goes was really always being open to hearing what was being said. And you gave some examples of how students sometimes kind of back off, like, oh, this is too simple or there's too much of this. And, then kind of listening to that and then welcoming it in and examining it and determining, well, okay, so let's tone it down, tone it up, do what we have to do to process further and become a little more unified, a little more clear about our purpose, but don't let go of the objective, which is to help young people accommodate with virtues and qualities. Right. I have another kind of question about that, and that is it's a question that I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about. Is how do we? There's a lot of people that think that they have all kinds of different ideas about youth. And it's not necessarily the fact that they're expecting too much. In fact, in a McLean survey, they said 9 out of 10 Canadians think that 8.5 out of 10 Canadians think that youth are worse or much worse than they were a decade ago. And so, you hear these statistics and, I said to my class, well, that means when you walk into a room and there's 10 adults, 9 of them think that, they're in for some kind of something. So you're kind of a disadvantaged population, and you're going to be the ones that are going to go out there and make a difference. You're not necessarily the ones that people are going to think we're going to listen to because, they're not seeing you in that way. So how do you encourage them to come from that part to be an agent of change with other children, other youth, other adults? Yeah.
Well, I find it fascinating that each generation declares the one just behind it to be deplorable, the worst that I'm a Gen Xer, and I recall very well how I was described as an adolescent. My peers were we had created the worst music on earth. Our morals were degraded. We weren't going to make any contribution. We were all about me. And yet, I think we've made some contribution to the progress.
Here we are. Here you are.
Yeah. And so when I reached a certain age and I heard my peers then saying of our own children, oh, this is, and then they would blame it on technology. Well, when we were kids, we didn't have. So I'm not so assured of the certain, the certain certainty that they're expressing in this. And I think perhaps it's just a way that we've always developed. But I think the good news is we're coming up with more tools to help young people identify for themselves. Who are we? And when we walk into a room, let us show forth who we are and not let other people define, name, create and speak for us.
Yeah, or box you in, or
Yes, and I have to say, even though social media has many tendencies that lead people astray, I actually also follow quite a lot of young people who are influencing a discourse around that. We are not deplorable. Let me show you what we are doing that is productive. And I can see from students who interact in this way with the Shiny Gems curriculum that they may be able to, also convey some of what
gives
is
them some
good.
confidence in
Yes.
their role. I could see that through your training with the youth we had here. And again, I think that we're a bit advantaged. Often I feel really privileged because I'm working with a lot of youth that really don't always start out wanting to make a difference, but definitely commit themselves to that on an ongoing basis. But even with that, they need these kind of experiences to, solidify the role that they want to do. Before a student can come here, we always ask them, what do you see as the problems in the world? And, what's good that's going on and what's not? And, so many of them have said to me, no one ever asked me that. So I started realizing more and more that they had a lot that they wanted to say. And if they're engaged in, the meaning and value of that, and then usually I'd say, well, do you see yourself as someone that wants to change the world or help to change the world? And they would inevitably say, yes, they wanted to. But they were always a little bit worried about how, how they were going to do it. Would there be any opportunities, really? And then I used to just say to them, well, that's what the school is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to provide the opportunities. And when we started the school and throughout the consultations, we had a rule, which was we don't blame the students. If something's not manifesting, then we have to restructure. We have to rethink. We're the ones with the program. We're the ones with the authority. So it's really our responsibility to bring that up. And I see this program as doing that. I want to highlight another maybe a little bit more complex question, which is I've thought a lot about virtues and as a foundational element. And of course, there could be some discussion about that, but I think, as you said, it's hard to disagree with naming them and the value of them. But what I've seen is that often with adolescents, they think that's too simple, and so we adopted at Nancy Campbell a moral capability approach. And, we break that down into virtues, attitudes, skills, and concepts. So now when I'm talking about that, it's now more complex, which we like complexity as adolescents and adults. But on the other hand, you could see how when you pursue a virtue, it brings skills and so on. So to me, I sort of see it as foundational, a part of, but it's also possible to demonstrate a lot of moral capability by actually, acting and educating. So I'm just wondering how you see that relationship, say, between people getting a better understanding of virtues, and then actually how does that translate into capability? Because I see you built it into your program.
I think one element is just the application of anything. So it is possible, obviously, to oversimplify something that actually has profound implications.
Yes.
And I think in your description of this moral capability, where you're like unpacking these things so that we can see that there's a depth to it. And I think as well, though we are stating the virtues, in part because a lot of schools don't have what Nancy Campbell has.
Yeah.
And so for them, this is utterly new. And what they've done in the past with many schools is simply put the name of a virtue on the sign and say, this week we are all practicing loyalty.
Kindness.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
Whatever it might be. But there's no path for a student to actually, what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, we have to be thankful that there's at least a recognition that these gifts of character are present and should be present in an environment. But I think what we've been getting at is, let's apply this, You have a right to define beauty And I love that the student, one of the reflections today was just around the nails that we see on Pinterest. Now, that is not an example that I could have come up with. I've never looked
nails?
for. Yeah, they
fingernails?
see nail designs on Pinterest. And one of their interpretations of what they've learned is they don't have to copy verbatim the nail designs that they see on Pinterest. That to me was very profound.
Yeah.
Because one, I couldn't have given them that example. I don't look at nail designs on Pinterest. But the fact that the curriculum was big enough for them to apply what they actually are doing in their lives to it, and then come to a new moral conclusion around that. I thought that was quite profound.
I do look at nail design on Pinterest, but more specifically for carpentry purposes. I should specify.
A different kind of nail. Yeah. Well, it's it's along the lines of the refinement of beauty. Well, I found that the school Nancy Campbell Academy is Baha'i inspired, but we're non-denominational, and we want students to really independently understand their values and apply them and combine all the values together to do something. So I found that sometimes there was this attitude, well, I'm not a Baha'i, so I don't have to be loving. And I started thinking, okay, this can't really work. And I thought, then I said to them, well, there's no monopoly on virtue. Everybody is trying to acquire virtues.
And it comes from all faiths.
Yeah.
I recently finished, I took last year because my experience with the Bible, for example, I always believed in it, but I had only read it in fragments. I set myself out in 2025, I would read the entire thing, at least to get a first glimpse. I knew that I wouldn't be understanding every single but it was astounding. I mean, I was so moved every single time. And comparing it to passages of the Quran, which, by the way, that's my next book. I need to read the entirety of the Quran. And then there'll be other books, the Bhagavad Gita, right? These principles, and this ties back to your previous question about religion and faith, it's taught in absolutely all religions.
Yeah, there's universal.
Maybe in different ways or different words for it and so on, but the underlying principles are the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we finally, as a school, we operate on 19 moral capabilities. And I found it really helpful we consulted with the teachers to identify what these were. And we went through a process of how we adopt them and created a new one from the list that was there before. And what I found it did help, because after that, then those were clearly posted. Students saw them. Before I hire a teacher, I give them, is there any problem with any of these capabilities? Because this is how we work. It's not something just posted on the wall. It's really happening. So if you have a problem with any of these standards, then, and these standards are pretty much universal. My experience with most parents is they read them like the virtues and qualities, and they say, well, I wish I had a school that was doing this, before. But it also gives everybody a kind of confidence that if I'm within these reasonable parameters, which could easily be reflected similarly in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
That's right.
Or, active policy of how we're going to conduct things, that, fair-minded people everywhere, of faith or of no faith,
right.
Yes.
They make sense. So to me, we have to build from that point of unity. And I find that our students, no matter what backgrounds they've come from,
right.
if they come here, I tell them, if you just wanted an academic education, this is not the place for you, because we're actually, we're saying that we want people that are committed to moral leadership for the benefit of mankind and excellence in academics.
Yes.
And don't worry about that. That's going to happen if you're doing this, because these two things together. And so I really love how Shiny Gems has made sure that it didn't make itself a course in technology, because every discussion I've had with parents or anyone else, it's always about what's good for my child, what's going to make them happy. They want them to be happy. And we use that as what is true happiness, is when we're being of service to others, when we're cultivating richness in relationships. And I'm so thankful that you've been working so hard to create a vehicle that empowers youth to do that. And I really want to thank you for being here for the podcast. And I don't know if you want to have any closing, something you're left out, but it's been very rich. And but I want to give you a chance if there's anything else.
I can just offer appreciation to Nancy Campbell Academy. It was a joy to be here. I have heard a lot about it. I've met students and graduates in the past, but to be in the school for a week has been truly a treasure. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. I know you've sacrificed in your family. I was thinking about you this morning, as I told you, thinking how many hours and weeks and months and years that you've really rendered so much service in so many places that we're really grateful that you chose us to spend a week with.
I also just want to share my thanks and gratitude to the Academy for inviting us. It was truly a pleasure. And like I've shared with the staff multiple times already, it's like, how can I sign up my daughter and my son to come as soon as possible? Well,
we might see more of you in the future then. That's
and there we go. Maybe too much.
This is how we build service in the, all these great, rich people. And both of you shared your experience of, how you got to be where you are with our students. And we always love to have that happen because we do really want to break down for our students. It starts by small steps and building up and the dreams when we're a child and connecting, our work. And so there shouldn't be a question in any parent's mind, the importance of reflection on values and qualities because they carry us a long time. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Gordon.